Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. It is a beautiful place, of course, and it's a wonderful occasion to share the floor with you, Riccardo. It's been a while, and we used to do these kind of events quite often with Lyfebulb, and it is nice to be back, and it's really nice to see so many familiar faces and some new ones as well. So really, really thank you for coming out. Tonight is a very special occasion because it's not just about a company, it's not just about a product, it's not just about the science behind why we are doing what we're doing, but it's really personal. And it's now 12 years or so that we started Lyfebulb together.
Yes.
And when we started Lyfebulb, we also had a third partner in that, in Steve Esquinto. And obviously, during those years afterwards, we were joined by such a great team, and we have many here today, Leslie, Jamie, Dom, and so many collaborators. But when we started, the three of us, it was really from a personal background. All three of us had experience with healthcare from various different perspectives. As a patient, as a care partner, as someone working in the industry. And for me, most of you know, I was a patient. I've been a patient for a long time, and even the past number of years, I've been a patient again and again. It never goes away. But for Riccardo, when we started, it was more someone who had supported, and you are one of the most supportive individuals I know, incredible person. I don't know how to describe it, but really, really incredible. And that's why it is so even more touching and important to share what you've gone through for the past number of years, when you became someone who was always helping, always supporting, to be someone who had to allow to be helped and to be supported. And that is what this is all about, is that we are vulnerable, we are connected, and sometimes we have to allow to not be in control. And I think this book and what you're doing now, because it's more than a book, it's a journey to meet as many people as possible to share that journey with. And I think you can help many across the many different dimensions of healthcare, meaning, of course, as a patient, you need to allow to be helped. I made that mistake for 20 years until I had to be helped. But also as a leader, and as you need to also allow to be helped, and not only being in charge and not letting go. And we all know that some of us have that problem, and not just controlling. And as a leader of a family, and we have several of your family members here, to allow also to not be in control all the time and be the ones helping. And I remember sitting down at lunch with Gabriele, and he was saying, my father is always in control. And this was before all this happened, and now see what a leader you've become. It's tremendous to see that. And then I think finally, it's believing in something bigger than all of us. And that's, I've struggled with that, because when you go through something so hard that you can't explain, why is this happening to me? Why is it happening to me? I've done only good things. Then you also have to let go and kind of lose control and try to see there's a bigger meaning to this, there's a bigger purpose. So I think all this is portrayed in your book. So Riccardo, I want to thank you for letting us share this moment with you, and want to give the floor to you and say a few words, and then of course I have some questions that we can take on. But first of all, welcome everyone, and I would say we want to welcome Riccardo to share his journey.
Thank you, Karin. First of all, it's a pleasure to be here with all of you in this beautiful place that remember me a lot of things we did in the past. So, as you all know, I am a pharmaceutical entrepreneur, third generation, and I've been dedicated all my 42 years in business in developing new products, cancer products, and other products for the benefit of patients. But on the 16th of December 2021, I fell down and I broke my tendons of the quadriceps. And it was in the evening, in the night. I decided not to go to the emergency unit, but to stay and at home, and then going only the next day, because I have a friend of mine which is a very good surgeon, orthopedic surgeon, that will fix it. And in fact, I went to the hospital, we entered the surgery, he fixed it, and then after the surgery, he came to my room in the orthopedic department, and he looked at me and said, well, the surgery went very, very well, but because we are friends, I want to tell you the news. And the news is that you have AML, the acute myeloid leukemia. And that's, of course, as anyone that receives a cancer diagnosis, it became a shock. It was a strong shock. And then, but immediately comes out my logical part of my thinking, and immediately when also the oncologists come in and the hematologists come in to talk to me, I said to the doctor, listen, I know perfectly well there is 27 to 30% survival rate. I will go into 3 or 4 chemotherapy cycles, and after that I will do potentially, if I find a donor, into transplant. So she was shocked to me. She looked at me, what? How do you know it? And then we start discussing and so on. But you know, in this journey there is a few things which are important. One is how to communicate. First of all, to communicate to your family. Communication in the family is based on love. You communicated about love to your wife, to your children, and normally is a positive communication. But that day, with my wife first and my sons later on, it was a communication that created a lot of pain, a lot of crying. And so for the first time in my life, I realized that communication could be very tough. And after that, of course, I decided also to immediately communicate it to all my employees. At that time, there was about 500 and more employees in different countries of the world. And I decided to do a video call and to have everybody to tell them myself what is the real truth. That I will be away, I don't know for how long, I don't know if I will come back, but I communicated immediately to everybody. And also that was a shocking communication, because I saw a lot of people switching off the videos, start crying, so it was a very difficult moment. So communication was the first things that I noticed, and I have to do quite quickly because of my role as a family leader, as a company leader, and so it was one of my first concern. Then that was during the day, but then it comes the evening, and then stay in the hospital, moving from the orthopedic department to the hematological department is totally another story. By the way, it was still the COVID period, so you cannot see anybody. Doctors only comes at the minimum as required, nurses as well. So it was moving from a world where I was a leader, meeting with friends, with family, with workers, etc., from a moment where I was alone in a room, a very small room, nice, but small, and not being in contact with anybody except through video calls. So that was a change, and you start the feeling of fear, because every patient start having fear. And fear for me was not fear to die. I'm very lucky and I'm blessed to have faith in God. And so this, for me, death is not an issue, is a passage. But the fear that I experienced that night and in the multiple days that follow was the fear of suffering, the fear to be forgotten, the fear not to see my son to be married and having grandchild or granddaughters, and the fear not to stay with my wife anymore, not the fear not to go back to the company. So all these fears was much more important than the fear to die. And then it started my journey into this moment, which was a long journey. As you know, in this kind of moment, is not you cannot do chemotherapy, come back home. You are in total isolation. But was a very difficult moment because I was walking with a stick, and at the same time I have all what I call my companion through the journey, which are all the side effects. You can imagine all the kind of side effects that you can have throughout these kind of treatments, because the chemotherapy was very heavy. And so this was my daily activities. And I was only together with my IV stick, you know, when there is the bag with the IV sticks that you go around the room. I call it my secret lover, because he's the only one which was with me all day long, night and day. But was something that all followed me. So fear was one of the issue, communication was the other way. But I always see this journey in a positive way. In fact, I call my chemotherapy treatment as the gold flow. I never say, it will make me painful, it will make me a lot of side effects. Of course did it. But I saw that as a gold flow that will enter in my body and help me to get through the therapy during the months to come. And this was a way to see the things in positive way, to see the glass is always half full, and it was a fantastic moment for me to always to go in a positive way. And the other things I said before, faith is very important. Whatever faith you have, doesn't care if you are Jewish, if you are Muslim, if you are Catholic, if you are Buddhist, but if you have a spirituality, then this will help you. And I have a companion every single day in my room. There was my companion. In my case, is Jesus, because I'm Catholic, but was my companion throughout the journey. And helped me a lot to see all the different things and also the bad moments. I had bad moments. I have 2 moments during the 7 months hospitalization where I said, please God, take me away. I'm full of that, I don't want to continue. And I was very lucky because in these 2 moments I have 2 important signs. One was a crying lady in the room close to mine that comes from the door, and I asked the nurse why she's crying. She was crying because she was about 22 years old, with no more, her mother passed away, and the father was not coming to see her or to phone her, and she has the same illness like I do. So I said, I'm lucky because I have a fantastic family, and so I cannot complain, so I have to turn around my desperation in a positive way. And the second time that I have very much desperation was the fact that the day that I said, please God, take me away, I was very lucky because I received a letter taking me to a friend of mine through the nurses, a letter from Pope Francis that say, Riccardo, don't give up, continue to prayer. I will pray for you, but remember you to pray for me. Of course, I know Pope Francis, but I never thought that you will spend some time to write me a letter. So that was another thing, saying, well, if there is somebody of this importance that is thinking to me, I cannot give it up. So faith has been an important factor of my journey. Another thing that I always tell to other patients that go into this journey is to be organized. So I put my journey as every day as an agenda, like I was in the office. So I wake up at 6 o'clock, prayers, then breakfast, then I do meditation, then I will do the chemotherapy, then I will do some exercise with a cyclet or some weight, and as it was possible to do, because in some days it was not possible. And then reading books. I did also some online courses, just not to lose my mind, and so to learn about new things like IE in healthcare or digital health in healthcare, so to be always on the top. And my day was full, and I was telling to my wife and my friends and my son, call me only after 6 o'clock in the evening, because I've full schedule. They said, well, you have full schedule for what? I have a full schedule, don't worry, it's important because my day is very full. And this was another way to thinking in a different way the illness and to go through these things. Then during the illness, I also had some important people that I met throughout the journey. And these people were fantastic people, are the nurses. Everybody that has to do with hospitals in one way or the other. Of course, doctors are key because they manage the therapy, they give you what to do. By the way, I was in a clinical trial because I asked to be in a clinical trials for some new drugs because I believe in it. But also, nurses are really the person that are here 24 hours, weekends, whatever you like it, when you feel bad, they just say good words, they are here with you. So this, I call it my angels, and you will see in my book are my guardian angels that are there all throughout. And I have a lot of respect for this job. And in fact, the English version of my books will raise money for the Conquer Cancer Foundation of America for young researchers. But the Italian version of the book will raise money for building a school for nurses in the sub-Saharan countries of Africa, because this is my other scope in life, is to help underdeveloped countries to have the same standard that we have. And of course, I was very lucky to live in one of the development countries, because if you live in Africa or in Asia or in South America, probably you will never have the opportunity to find a donor for the transplantation. So that was the journey. So you will see in the book there is different points which I think is important to see. Also, one point was the leadership approach. Now I'm a different man. I don't know if I'm better or not, but definitely a different man. Now I know what leadership is. Leadership is not to have control on every single aspect of my company, but is to delegate, to step aside when it's important and leave somebody else to run the show and just control it by far away. I'm very happy and to have 4 fantastic sons that are all of them working in my companies, and I'm handing over to them in a relay race where I'm running in front, but being older, I run every day slower in order to pass to them the next generation. So this book is about the journey into the illness, of course, but it's also a journey into the faith, and you will see that it's an important part of my life. Is a journey into leadership, how leadership should be changed in approaching a situation like that, but hopefully should change anyway. And is also a journey how you can interact with research with pharmaceutical products, because now I know the role of the patients much better. I have been developed clinical trials and information for patients for all my life, and I see that very clearly. It was simple, very well stated, respecting the law, but when you became patients and you look at the consensus, the information consensus of any clinical trials, you start to have doubts, fear, there is something hide behind what I'm doing, and I am an expert in the area. Imagine the people that are not expert, the fear and the doubt they have. So it's very important that we change our mentality in the industry to be very much more close to the patients. And this journey also teach me a lot on this part. So this is what I did, and my scope today is to talk about this role, because I have the opportunity to have the two sides of a coin, pharmaceutical entrepreneur as well as cancer patient, a survival cancer patient. And this will help a lot of people because of the money that we'll raise in the next years to raise money for important causes that will help new patients to have a better quality of life for the future. So that is what it is about, and I thank you all very much for your attention.
So, Riccardo, two questions, if I may. The first one, you said you had this schedule, and I know you always have a schedule, very tight schedule. And as a patient, and many of you out here, we're all patients. We all are patients, or we become patients at some point, and we're patiently waiting to become patients. So maybe not always patiently, but we don't want to be patient. So when you have the schedule, do you think that takes you out of the mode of thinking that you are a patient? No one wants to be one. I'm just thinking more about how we can give this lesson to others who are going through something. The scheduling, did it take your mind off? The focus, the fear?
Well, the schedule was a way to get away from one important feeling that you immediately get after the fear, which is the vulnerability. As a patient, you became very highly vulnerable. And so you start thinking, I depend from others. I am not anymore the decision making of my next days, my next month. Somebody else will decide for me. So the only way to have some part of a day where being vulnerable, I can do something that I decide to do is my agenda. And so in this part, of course, then when I come doctor, is him to take a decision. When the nurse comes for the chemotherapy, it was her to do it. But at least the rest part of the day, this agenda take me back to my normal life in some way, and so it was a way to feel a little bit less vulnerable.
And the reason why I really want to focus on this is that I think many patients, all patients feel vulnerable and a loss of control. That's the worst feeling, right? But many patients then get into a mode of trying to control also the healthcare narrative and don't follow what the doctor says, perhaps, and disobey in a way the regimen. But what you've been able to do is to kind of carve out time points where you are a patient and you listen, while you have other time points where you're still somewhat in control. And I think that's a really good lesson to share. So the second point is, now as still the CEO and chairman, the leader of your company and many other ventures, what are some practical lessons that you've taken from your experience as a patient when it comes to implementing strategies and perhaps even tactics within your company, if any?
So there is another point that I didn't mention, but during my illness, as usually when things goes bad, everything goes bad. So while I was a year away for 1 year, also my company went very bad, almost on to be bankrupt. And so when I come back, we have to restructuring that, to put the company in a different mode, and it was very, very difficult. So for me, today what I learned is, as I said before, to just step aside on a discreet way, let others say the words, let's say their own opinion. I try to guide on a remote way. I'm not anymore sitting in the driving spot, but I'm trying to sit in the passenger spot and somebody else driving the car, depending on the occasion. So in one case, I have one son driving one car, the other son driving the other car, and some of my colleagues that are here tonight, they're driving very, very professionally. And I try to, having 42 years of experience in this sector, just to be the old man that give some good thought and suggestion to the younger.
That's good. That's a great answer, and I think we all can. You're very lucky, and I guess it's also thanks to you and your wife and the whole family to raise the children so that they're now grown up and they can drive the cars, versus having not been involved at some point. So there's a moment of switch there. If we think back to this unique time point of COVID and being very isolated and not being able to share physical presence with other people and really being alone, and you talk about the desert, I mean, what are some points that you can maybe talk a little bit more about?
Well, solitude is something that comes with this illness because you are isolated. You don't do a chemotherapy and then you go home. So you are isolated for many months, and with COVID was even more. So that is one aspect which was very important, to be alone and to feel alone. But as I said before, I was lucky to have a fantastic family, my wife and my sons, that support me a lot, and a lot of friends, a lot of also collaborators in the company that helped me a lot in this period of time. Of course, facing this sentiment to be alone is something that you have to fool with something. And of course, the agenda was one way. The other way, as I said, is the faith. And the faith is something that gives you an additional speed and additional resources, which is quite unique. And I was always knowing that even in the difficult times, I have somebody with me, in me or above me, that was helping me in the difficult times. So that things of being alone last maybe 10 minutes, and then I remember that there was somebody that was definitely taking care of me. And during this, of course, and I read in the book, comes out also the question, why me? I am a good entrepreneur. I always did charity. I always help patients. I think to be a good father and a good husband, what I did to merit that. And my answer, based on my faith, is because God knows that I can manage it, I can go through it, and I can potentially fight it in a positive way.
So you were chosen to go through this journey so that you could inspire others?
I think everybody is chosen to do something in life, and everybody of us is chosen in his families, in his work, in everything, to do a role. And if you do in a positive way, it's much better, and so help the other to see things in life in a positive way.
Absolutely. You did talk also about your bone marrow transplantation, or cell transplantation. Can we talk about that, because that is a major change, right, in replacing your immune system, and you had to go through a whole new revaccination and becoming a new person to a certain extent because your immune system changed.
Oh, for sure. First of all, I think I am a new person also because my wife said to me the donor was a lady, so I get some female touch. So finally, I get to understand somehow the women, which is a great thing. But a part of a joke, I think that I was very, let's say, lucky to find the donors. We went through the database in Europe, and there was only one donor that was compatible to me. None of my family was. I cannot do my autologous transplantation, so I have to go outside, and I find a lady in Poland that was matching 100% of me, and was a kind of special indirect relation, because in Europe there is a privacy law, so you cannot know who is the donor, and the donor doesn't know who is the receiver. So I imagine always a young, because I know the age, 39 years old, from Warsaw. So I thought blonde hair, nice lady that gave me the stem cell to me. And I invented also a name which is called Dorothea from from the Greek word of gold, because it gave me the gold, the things to change. And so this transplantation was great. As a transplantation was easy, because it's about 3 hours through a normally blood delivering bag. But then, of course, it what happened afterwards. Afterwards, it's like to be in a roller coaster for 3 weeks. Everything that could happen. So high pressure, low pressure, nausea, vomiting, everything, because of course until that you can really taste well and in a proper way the dosage of the immunosuppressor, then it's really a roller coasters. And then of course I also had the GDHD, which is the rejection to my transplantation, and also that was another 2.5 years of lung, GDHD, intestine, and skin. So all of that created me a lot of problems. So itself, transplantation is one moment, but what is before and after is a long journey, and this is what I was looking now to find new treatment, new drug for before and after for better quality of life of patients.
That's good. I'm gonna ask the audience for some questions, but I think it's really your area of GVHD. I mean, there are some new discoveries that are happening in transplantation. There are some new approaches that are happening. So there's a promise in the field, and I think the more we talk about it and raise also the questions about quality of life, because we, again, as a patient, we're more than a patient. We also live life. It's important to think about all those different things. It's not just about cure, it's also about living well. So I'd like
and
to...
in fact, just to comment that, living well, I was last weekend at Chicago for the American Oncology Association Congress, and for the first time I had a badge called Cancer Survival. And I think this is something important because first to be a cancer survival, but to be there to testimony what people can do, what the science can do, what the doctor can do, and what the Patients Association can do, and of course I will add also what God can do.
Thank you. And that must have been quite the experience after so many years. Any questions from the audience that you would like to, or from our friends, not the audience? Yes? Do you want to start? Yes, sure.
What an incredible story, and thank you for sharing it. What surprised you the most, both positively and negatively?
You mean through the journey?
Yes.
So this is why I call also the book The Journey Through the Desert, because if any of you have been on holidays in a desert, you normally do one step in front and then you go do 2 steps behind because there is a lot of sand, and then it's hot with a difficult moment and so on. But also in the desert you can have a fantastic moment of great lights, or you find an oasis at the end where you can find water. So answering to your question, my journey into the desert has found difficult moment on my body. I thought that my body was much weak, and I was able to resist to that. So that was something that I was also losing some memory, and this was also scaring me a lot. So that was another moment that was very difficult. And I remember the doctor was saying to me, you have to tell the month on the other side. So I never did it, so I would start doing December, November, October, and so on, to keep my mind open in different languages, English, Italian, French, and so on, to keep it mind open. So that was difficult to lose the memory. And the positive things was really to see that today science is really making life of a lot of people much better. Of course, there is still a lot to be done in a country like Africa or South America or Asia, and even here in our countries where the poor cannot afford the same treatment. We are lucky because we can, because of insurance or because of coverage, but many others cannot. So to work in a way that we can help also people that cannot afford was also a good, positive teaching that I get out of that.
So I loved reading your book, and you have to add author to your list of accomplishments, Riccardo. We were on a corporate board at the time that you were sick, and I have such an appreciation now for what you went through having read your book. But we were on many Zoom calls together from your hospital room, and what I was so struck by was your optimism and how positive you always were. So my question was, how did you keep this positivity all through your journey?
You know, that is based on the fact that I have a gift which is faith. So for me, the dying is not a fear, is a passage. So saying that, everything which is in between is a way to think the things in a positive way. So I always smile, because smile always should be given to everybody. I smile also to the nurses when I was there, because and to everybody which is around, because it's a way to live the difficult moment in a different ways. And I told you just before, I mean, and I come out of the hospital and I was in a very economic bad situation. I have to guarantee the banks with all my personal wealth, houses. I went to my wife and said, we have to sign a document to give all the house to the bank in case the company go bankrupt. So, but also in that moment, I smiled to my wife and she said, okay, you believe in it, we will do it. And in fine, I think to live in a positive way, anything difficult in the world, you have really a force, a strength, which you will be winner by definition.
Thanks, first of all, Riccardo, for joining me and for inviting me today. It's a great surprise and a great pleasure to listen to you. I think that everyone can be patient in the coming future, hopefully, of course, or not. But then I think that from this story, I learned something very important. Many of us are involved in pharmaceuticals and distributions in the healthcare sectors. And I think such an interesting story, as I told you, all of us today, it could be an important experience, an important aim to strengthen the cooperation over the research and affordable products. Because I think that we have to spread as much as possible, of course, pharma products all over the world. And instead of, I don't want any politician topics and I don't want to touch any, because first of all we're in the US, but I don't want to be misunderstood. But I think that if you're healthy, you can do everything. So I think that we have to recognize that health is the most important value that we must have and everyone should have. So I think that starting from this country, where the R&D is very important and many companies, of course, discover new drugs, I think that everyone has to do something in order to strengthen and to create new chance for the patients that we have to come and how to treat in a very affordable way, in a very open way. Thank you.
Absolutely, I agree with you. I was Sunday in Chicago with a professor at the University of Chicago Hospital that he has created a fantastic foundation for stem cell transplantation, to take that any part of the world. So people that are in India or in Nigeria or in Peru that they cannot afford, because in that country also can be expensive, not as expensive a year, but still very expensive to face this kind of things. And so we will now have a program for Africa to take this opportunity to patients that cannot afford, and so we will find a way of financing them to get to the hospital and do stem cell transplantation also in their countries.
Thank you.
Riccardo. So first, thank you for writing the book. I read it over the weekend. Incredible story, inspiring, difficult to read in passages as you're going through your treatment. I think a couple of things that really stuck out to me is the deepness of your faith and how that carried you through the journey. That was very clear all the way through the book. Your love of your family and the support of your family and how that sustained you through that journey, and your obviously your pride in your company and your entrepreneurship over the years. I learned, I've known you for a short time. I think I learned a lot about you as a person and what motivates you very, very deeply. I did sense your frustration that you got a mend rather than a Kinsio as your antiemetic. I smiled at that particular sentence in the book, and I share that concern. You mentioned that obviously it was your tendon injury that sort of led to the road to your diagnosis of your AML. Did you think of that as a sort of faith-guided event? Did you believe there was some sort of divine intervention that sort of led you to that, so you got the diagnosis when you did?
Yes, there is a chapter on the book which is called I'm Luck or Not. And I call personally, not in the book, but I call personally that God coincidences. And there are many. The first one is that, I have done my full checkup on the beginning of December, so it was the 2nd of December. And then in 16 I broke my tendon, and then I did surgery and discovered my leukemia. But the things that I didn't tell you before is that I broke my tendon falling down on the stairs of my chapel in my garden. So that was the first sign. Throughout the book, you will see there are multiple signs that I think are there not just because of coincidence, but because something was written already.
Riccardo, first of all, thank you so much for having us tonight, and it's a joy to share your journey also with other people. One question I wanted to ask is this. Obviously, you've been an entrepreneur, running a family business for so long, going through this challenge and difficulty. So if you, and with the faith that you have just highlighted, so if you were to draw some insights from this for businesses, for people who run businesses within a time span, and if you consider the long run, any business will have some people that will experience, serious or less serious health issues. What would be your recommendation to someone who runs a business to ensure that you continue to run it, but factoring in that this will happen, and what can you do to be resilient in advance of that happening?
Yeah. I tell you, I tell briefly, but I think it's important to become not so important, so to become discrete, indispensable. To just give up the control, let the others starting having their role, let others doing also mistakes, because before having a maniac of a control, I want that everything is perfect, and that is impossible. In any organization, you do mistakes, and mistakes are very important to do better in the future. So it's important that everyone has his own activities, has his own things, and so the control should be stepped back. Of course, control is needed, but is discreetly stay on the side, and also giving values. That is very important. That is what the organization will survive if you have great values. So giving values such as integrity, such as quality, such as the respect for clients, for patients, for doctors. These are values that will continue throughout generation of family members, throughout generation of collaborators. Then, of course, you have to have performances, of course, you have to have results. But if you are based on the really good value, and not just value that you put in the mission of the company or which everybody has it's real value that are shared and be part of all the people working in the same company.
That's really well said. Before, Dr. Hardy, before you speak, can I just follow up on one thing you said, because it doesn't bother me, but I just want clarity on it. When you say that this experience has allowed you to kind of lose a little bit of that control and your perfectionism, which I remember very clearly, for some people, when they go through something like you have gone through, I mean, for me personally, after going through some of these worst things, I feel almost a need that every hour, every minute has to be lived as much as possible, right? I can't give up any time because I know that it might not last. And it makes me more controlled. It makes me more of a perfectionist in everything I do. And then I get tired and I might actually get sick again. So I just wonder, and I feel like I have kind of almost established a little balance now, but I sometimes get into that mode again, and it affects my relationships, affects maybe how I feel with my daughter even. So I wonder, how do you not get into that you don't feel a need to always be on, because you might not be on for a very long time going forward because you've experienced this episode in the past?
First of all, you are the professional of transplantation. I am just very little with one transplantation. You are the really expert on all of that, and I always have a lot of respect for that. I think that, I always been in my life that any hour counts. Don't lose any hour, because God give you life and you don't have to throw away. So you have to dedicate your hour, whatever you do, any kind of work, any kind of reading, any kind of things, but just not be lazy. Not doing anything doesn't make any sense. So I don't think that was very different from before and after. I've always been like that. I always want to do more things. I have an agenda that will go on for probably another 50 years. Of course, that will not be possible, but I have targets in creating more school in Africa. Today I have 30 schools with 45,000 students. I want to go to 100,000 students. I want to create more research support for young researchers that do very rare cancer disease, and so on and so on. So if I have 1 hour free after running, but then I do have to do something else. So that was never an issue for me, not before and after. Always be a full-time dedication to use a very well life.
Yep. Thank you. Dr. Hardy.
Hi. Thank you very much for a very illuminating talk about very important problems, and they're extraordinarily difficult to solve. I'm an organ transplant surgeon, and I'm also a victim of 2 cancers in the past and other diseases that are not nice either. So what I want to ask you is something that I feel as a physician I need to transfer to my patients. You mentioned the issue of recognition of the problem and how you manage it in terms of your own feelings, and you rely heavily on religion. My problem is, how do you do this with patients who don't have that kind of faith, which is majority actually in this country at least, and how do you manage to transfer to them hope, but without lying to them, which is one of the problems that physicians frequently have, as we all do in a way, both as the families and within the family. The issue of hope is really, to me, critical in getting the patients to heal. I think that if I can transfer that feeling of hope, their chances of getting better are much more increased than if I can't do that.
Yeah, the role of the physician is very difficult because first of all, you have a lot of patients, very little time. You have to dedicate also a lot of time to administrative things, and ideally it would be fantastic to dedicate a lot of time to patients. So the communication to patients is very delicate. In the last year or so, now I'm dedicating as volunteer time to patients that will go into the same journey of the transplantation, that they have to start the chemotherapy and then transplantation, trying to give me what I feel, and what are some suggestions to go through. Of course, it's very difficult because each person is different, each person has different fears, each person could have faith or not, and of course, if they don't have faith, it's more complicated to give them the things. But and of course, if they are alone because they don't have family, it's even more complicated. So there are a lot of situations which is very difficult, and also the way to tell the diagnosis, I saw that is very difficult because you can tell straightforward to a person like me, but maybe to an older person or to a not well-educated person, that is much more complicated. So it will be a touch first to understand who you are in front, not just the patient with the disease, but the patient with his background. What is his background first? And then you can dedicate time how to deal with that in a proper communication way, trying to give some ideas, because the fact of having an agenda during the day, having an online courses, having some books to read, things like that could be useful to everybody or anybody, even if they don't have faith. So there are things that can be done in a support way, even if they are alone or not family supported or with no faith. So there are ways to find a solution through that.
Well, I have been I got into the education business for patients, actually, with Karin. Before that, I was always with the education business in Africa and residents and so forth, and my colleagues. But in terms of education, how do you manage to transfer that idea of hope and seeing things in good colors rather than bad colors, without lying to them? That is really the problem. Is there a solution of how to do this?
I think that is the metaphor that I use in my book is the journey into the desert, exactly because it is an image that doesn't tell lie. In the desert, you can die. And the moment that you have a diagnosis like this, of any other cancer type, you can die. And this is clear. And you don't cheat to that. You say you are in the desert, but in the desert you can walk through, and you can have enough resources to thinking that you can go through, and also because in the desert you can find moments where you can have an inspiration. And I know people that they didn't have faith and they find faith. And faith is not faith in a religion, it can be just a spirituality, something having a better growth of your own spirituality. The major gift that I have in that experience was my priest that he said to me at the beginning of the therapy, Riccardo, I don't know if you will survive. I don't know how it will go up, if you die or not, but make that this period will be your journey into the desert. And this journey, you learn better your spirituality, your inner behavior. And this can be happen to anybody. Even people that don't believe can improve their inner capability throughout this period. And if they do that, they will see little by little the things in a more positive way.
Thank you everyone. I think we will. And since we still have more time together, we can continue to ask questions and converse. But I think one of the key messages today was that we need to take a little step forward and maybe not 2 steps back, right? So even if we're in the desert, if we can take even a half step forward, and I think to your question, Dr. Hardy, you have to understand the person and understand what motivates them. Because not everyone might be motivated in the same way. So maybe it's the next meal. For me personally, if I can think about what I get next to eat, I can look forward at least a few hours, right?
Yes.
I can look forward to the smile of a friend or the being able to walk around the block until I can do a mountain, right? So little steps forward are so important when you're in this battle.
Just to look what it will be the next step you can eat.
Yeah.
Because when you have
Yes.
very deep mucositis in your
Right.
mouth, you cannot do anything. So
Right.
when they can eat again without
And even if it's a little soup, and I remember Jim, you're over there. I remember you were mixing food for me when I was so. Anyway, so those little things make a big difference, and as long as we can survive one more day, we get a little better, right? A little better every single day. That's all that counts. So thank you so much,
And be free to take a copy of the book, which is behind, has been already signed. And if you want to make a donation, there is a QR code on the tables. Thank you very much.